Hi, I wanted to do a video about how I am now. Now, at any moment, something could interrupt me, like my housemate could come in, or a lawnmower will go off, or a dog will start barking. But I'm just going to surrender to that and roll with it, because I've been trying to record this for a while now. Okay. So I actually made a separate page for helping people through psychiatric med withdrawal, and it's called the Psych Med Sanctuary, because I also am a creative, and before all of this and all of that happened to me, the pandemic, I was very much acting and singing and doing all sorts of creative things, and I want that to be my life again. So currently I am doing a funder to fund some music that I've been writing, and also a one-woman show I would really love to be able to put on. And without your help, I don't know how I'll do it, because I've really been on this kind of upward sort of mountain of recovery since the pandemic, getting really swiped by the pharmaceutical industry and its dark side. So currently I am tapering off my last medication. I ended up on 3. I initially went in for tinnitus. In the pandemic, I got ringing in my ears after I got COVID, and I went to a private doctor, and he said, look, take this and it will help calm you. It will help your tinnitus, basically, and we don't want your sleep to get worse. And because it was the pandemic and it was such a weird time, I just thought, okay, well, I'm going to trust this guy. He came recommended. I wasn't a medication taker before this. I would take paracetamol for my period if it was really bad, and that was about it. So that's that. So currently for the last kind of 4 years, I've been going through this experience, and really by pure miracle came back to life through reinstating this initial drug that was given to me. The initial drug was lorazepam. Now, I feel stupid saying that now, because now I know exactly what this drug was and is. But at the time, I had never heard of it. I had heard of Valium, yes. And if he had given me Valium, I would have definitely said no and known all of the connotations around Valium. But I just was really trusting this guy. And he said he gave it to old people. He said it was completely safe. And I even did my own research online, and he said, no, don't look at Google. It's full of crap and all that kind of thing. So, I just literally, like a Bambi on ice, towards the snake, I got snared. And and it happens to a lot of people. So through my experience and through doing videos on my channel, I'm Not Dead, and the interview I did with my friend Ollie, you can really see that there's so many people going through this, and so many people get led into that snare. Yes, not everyone gets negatively affected by these drugs. However, more than you'd think, and it can go from severe to mild. Mine was severe, and when I talk about mild, it could manifest in like a really weird health condition you start having. Like this guy Mark Horowitz, for example, he was on an antidepressant for many, many years. I won't quote exact years or anything like that, but I think it was more than 10. And he ended up getting something that the doctors thought was narcolepsy. Like he just kept on sort of shutting down and falling asleep, passing out. Actually, it turned out that it was his antidepressant that was causing that. So that's an example of, I'm not going to say that's mild, but if we're often taught and we're often told by doctors that these things are completely safe, and they at this moment they completely deny any negativity around these drugs, and people are left on them for years and years and years and years of their life, because they think, well, I can't function without this drug. We're really taught that there's this chemical imbalance in our brains, and we're taught that without the drug, when we're not going to be able to survive, whereas really it's just not the case. It's just not the case. And there are so many other ways of healing ourselves rather than taking a pill that comes with such risk and long-term health conditions, and also short-term, quite severe problems. And I was in that short-term severe bracket where I just got adverse reaction quite quickly, and I'm just definitely not made for medication. And there are so many more people like me as well, just more of a sensitive nervous system or a sensitivity to chemicals. I get drunk really easily. Whenever I did try drugs in my early 20s, I was never really a drug taker. I mean, never, because I would try something and I just wouldn't get on with it at all. So, yeah. Not to say that would mean that you're going to get really bad side effects from drugs or medication, but that was certainly what it was for me and how it manifested. So, yeah. Currently, I've just been navigating life through this, trying to not have anything going on too much that will stimulate my nervous system. I've tried to survive through this. I don't really know how I've been doing it. And when I get off this final medication, which is mirtazapine, the other two was the lorazepam. So that was the initial problem drug. And I reinstated that. So that's where I got to before. I reinstated the drug 8 months out into this horrendous withdrawal. And somehow the reinstatement stabilized my nervous system back to a functional baseline. So before that, I was experiencing the most horrendous neurological symptoms that were just absolutely terrifying, stuff of nightmares, a psychosis. I got into a psychosis from just not sleeping. The withdrawal of the lorazepam initially just stopped my ability to sleep. And so that's when the other drugs came into action, because I then ended up going through 3 psychiatric units, getting all the wrong diagnosis, because akathisia, which is what I had, and Jordan Peterson talks about this, is this fast thought, this horrible, deep, dark thoughts going so fast, and then your body can't stop moving. So it's like this movement disorder, and this horrible, unquenchable feeling to pace and to move. I mean, it's horrifying. And Jordan Peterson does talk about his experience with that. So, it's good to talk about named people, because I think, people just think this is all just something that just doesn't exist. Unfortunately, it does. Anyway, so I was in this state and I looked horrific, and I was talking about suicide. So obviously, unfortunately, I ended up in a psychiatric unit in Spain, where they gave me more medication, which made the whole thing completely worse, because at that point, really, my nervous system was on fire. It was just on fire. Because the doctor had told me to stop taking the lorazepam overnight, and I've been taking it for 6 months. And he said, 2 weeks and then you're off. He didn't even talk about tapering. I had no idea what tapering was. I didn't know about any of this, really nothing. And doctors don't tell you about tapering. They don't tell you that that's actually quite important. They're very, very quick just to get you on a very quick chop it in half, and then you're off, and then you're done. I ended up doing that, and that's what threw me into this withdrawal state. No sleep, akathisia, the pacing, and then that just was a very, very quick decline, which then sent me to psychosis, because obviously if you don't sleep and your brain is being warped by all these different drugs, and you're somebody like me who's incredibly sensitive, it doesn't take, I say it doesn't take much, but actually it was a lot of stress and nightmarish experiences that I went through. I'm not surprised that I ended up in a very, very deep, dark psychosis for, I'd say, the best part of 6 months, from mild to severe. So it just got worse and worse and worse. Anyway, so I reinstated 8 months out, and I'd been through 3 psychiatric units. I'd also almost died. I'd been rehydrated. I'd been pumped full of food. I'd been given antipsychotics. And these drugs, the mirtazapine, the antidepressant that I was given, and the antipsychotic, they were given together. And this, in the 3rd psychiatric unit, seemed to actually put me to sleep. So when I took it at night, I went to bed. But then when I woke up in the morning, I would carry on this horrendous experience of pacing and this inner torture until I reinstated the lorazepam. So, I'm not a scientist, obviously, but logically, I suppose, because it was 8 months out into this withdrawal. So there's different phases of the withdrawal. Like, for example, you've got the acute phase. So that's when you're literally right in it. And then as months go by, you basically, they say that you heal, and you do. And I see this in people in the withdrawal, where they go from just this horrendous state to eventually getting windows of calm, windows of normality, and eventually they are normal. But this can go on for years for people. And I tried a reinstatement because I was just so bad. I mean, I had been given so many different drugs, and it was really like I was in a very, very bad way. And I followed the advice from somebody who had gone through a very similar thing, and he sort of sowed the seed, and he said, why don't you just try taking like a very small amount of the initial drug that caused this whole problem? And the thing is I had tried before in the acute phase, in that initial phase, and it hadn't done anything. And so really I see it as a miracle. 8 months out, you know, I've been sleeping because I'm on these other 2 medications that aren't doing anything else helping me at all apart from sleep. And yeah, I introduced this benzodiazepine, the lorazepam again, and I go to this baseline, and it just honestly felt like if there was a God, or if there is a God, it was just like night and day. It was like, my life is over. I'm going to have to find a way to end it myself because I'm in so much torture. Oh, I've taken 0.5 of this lorazepam, and all of a sudden I'm back. And so since then, I have been very slowly tapering off each individual drug. I water tapered the lorazepam, I dry cut the quetiapine, and I jumped off at 0.01. So I went down to literally the last crumb because my nervous system was so harmed by this whole thing. And you soon learn through the online community and the online forums and things, you have to kind of work it all out, and you have to really, become your own scientist, as it were. It's sort of madness, but unfortunately at the moment doctors just have no idea how to handle this. If someone does run into this kind of harm and this kind of trouble, they just don't know what to do. And psychiatrists really don't want anything, they don't want to hear about it, because really, I mean, I think it's because they charge so much, psychiatrists. I mean, one charged £500 for an hour. You know, they don't want anything to get in the way of their income, of making their money. And obviously they believe in the medication, but unfortunately, you know, yes, some people can get help by medication, but there's also a really, really dark side to medication, and that for some reason just is not spoken about. So anyway, currently I am on my last dry cut. So I'm dry cutting mirtazapine. I've just sort of got through a very stressful brand crossover. So I was on the same brand of this mirtazapine for 3 years, and recently I just couldn't find it anywhere in the pharmacies. And when you're tapering and when you're harmed like me, you just have to stay on the same brand. You just don't want to change anything. Anyway, I had to change to a new brand. Hopefully, I'm hoping this one is going to be more readily available. But with that came a crossover period, and then I got really hit with this most awful virus. I mean, since COVID, there are so many weird viruses going around, and my immune system has really taken a hit. So when before this, I would never ever get this sick, ever. And so, yeah, tapering and withdrawal can really just really give your nervous system and your immune system a hard time. And so when you do catch something, it can really take you down. And because I was going through this very sensitive brand crossover, which I was doing over a month, going from one brand to another brand. So they say that the manufacturers that make these medications aren't different, but I liken it to, you have 2 cooks making the same meal. I feel like there's going to be differences in those meals because each cook has a different way of making that meal. And it's the same with these drug manufacturers. And when you think about it, it's kind of crazy. We're taking a pill that affects our brains and then we're just sort of, you know, the pharmacies are just giving you these things from any which factory. One could be in China, one could be in Spain, you know, and they're like, oh no, it's completely the same. Yeah. There's a lot of people, such as me, that have experienced differences in their brands and the manufacturer where they're getting their medication from. And yeah, when you're sensitive, when you're harmed, you just don't want anything to get in the way of getting off this drug. And so, yeah, that's what I experienced recently, was this very sensitive moment of changing brand. And I'm just praying. I'm on my last med. I knew it was going to be a problem with this med because it's just such a long time to keep getting the same manufacturer to give me the medication. You know, some manufacturers just pack up completely, and so somebody has to completely change their brand because of that, because their brand has been discontinued. And, you know, pharmacies will say, well, no, it's just exactly the same ingredients, it can't be different. Well, there's a lot of evidence online. I've experienced it in my nervous system. There is a difference, unfortunately. And so that's another really wild thing that can happen that isn't spoken about. And again, you know, we're all different. This whole thing with COVID, I mean, I liken it to COVID, is that some people got COVID and they didn't even know they got COVID. Some people got COVID and it killed them. And really that is the same for psychiatric medication, antidepressants, benzodiazepines, antipsychotics. One person can take it and maybe they can feel like, oh, this has really helped me and it's taken my anxiety away. Another person can take it and actually they can feel very suicidal, have an adverse reaction and get akathisia and then jump off a building. So, you know, you've got two very, it really is, that is the way. So, you know, on this page, I didn't really want to talk about it that much, but I also feel like, I don't know, the activist in me wants this to change in a lot of ways. And I'm going to be posting some new music. And one of the songs is very much about this. And so I think it's important to give some context to it all. My time in psychiatric units was just horrendous, and to witness I guess a lot of them aren't funded over here in the UK, and I think it's like care homes. You know, people talk about people in care homes being abused, and it's very similar in psychiatric units. I think it's just wild, really. Human nature can be very dark, and I think when people are in a vulnerable situation, they are subject to more abuse. And psychiatric units are really, really rough places. And I get that some people end up in there in a very, very bad way. Very dangerous people, you know, they're in a psychosis, maybe they're violent, or they're a danger to themselves and others. So, you know, yes, it's kind of like a holding space for these people. But also there's people in there that maybe have just had a really, really bad time, and maybe they punched a wall, or there was a girl in there that was sort of, you know, it's quite suicidal. But then it's like there's one thing being suicidal and there's one thing actually going to do it. You know, it's a lot of people can say, you know, I'm feeling suicidal, but they won't actually do it. And then they could end up in a place like a psychiatric unit where actually it's just going to make them feel a whole lot worse. And it's scary being in those places. You know, your rights are taken away from you, in terms of, like, you know, you can get locked up in there or your belongings taken away from you. It's very oppressive, and I don't really understand how anyone can get better in those places. It's just wild to me. And so, yeah, I'm really shocked that I didn't die from the over medication, which can also happen, but then just isn't spoken about. And it's very easy to call someone crazy once they're in a psychiatric unit. You're kind of fucked, basically, you know. So anyway, I am also in the process of a documentary called What's Up Doc, which I really want it to be finished, but it's not really on my timeline anymore. However, it's so close to being finished and shared, and there's talks of getting it on some really interesting streaming platforms as part of either like an hour documentary or a 3-part documentary. And it's really all about the over-prescribing of medication, the lack of knowledge within doctors, you know, who are the ones giving out antidepressants largely, you know, just very casually all the time, for anything, really. I mean, some people go in with a headache or a migraine and they come out with an antidepressant. So it's really about, you know, shining a light on this, and how when people do run into problems and they get symptoms or side effects from the medication, that doctors have absolutely no idea how to help people, and people often then end up in a worse place because they're given more medication, their symptoms or side effects are diagnosed as mental health issues, and it just goes around in this awful, awful place. Also, you know, just bringing this conversation into light that, like, how can we really expect to get better from taking a medication? You know, there's mental health is so complex, and I think it's become very boxy how we've labelled people. Oh, you've got this, this, and this, and this. Whereas everyone's experience is going to be very different, and everyone's history is going to be very different. And I don't think taking a pill is going to take away all of those complexities. And it's sort of wild to me that doctors have managed to brainwash us into thinking that, and from being on the other end of being harmed by the medication and seeing so many people's lives destroyed, it's just so sad, because it could be easily avoided, and there's no reason why we need to end up on medication in the first place. And so the documentary really goes into what is this medication, what does it do in a scientific way. There are people talking on there, psychiatrists. So I'm a bit stuttery because my tapering currently, it just makes me sometimes not be able to speak. So it's from all angles, from doctors who really believe in the medication, from doctors who have actually experienced withdrawal themselves, and can see how severe that can be. So yeah, it's a really interesting documentary, and I just can't wait for it to be out. So yeah, I'm just giving you basically an all-round recap of where I'm at now, what's going on. I'm really hoping that the documentary will come out this year. I pray to God. It's just, if it was on my timeline, I feel like I'd just be cracking down on it. But I get that, the people doing it, they're also doing it off their own back, really. Alex and Jess, and they're incredibly talented people. They're really good at all of that. They've got a little girl, and obviously they're in London, and it's just life, right? But yeah, I'm really pushing for that, and I won't stop until it's done, until it's out there, because it's full of such interesting information, and the way that it's told. I've shared my story in there, as well as we're sharing other people's stories as well. So yeah. It's there's a real feeling like I just want it done, because it's been going on for so long, but hopefully they will do it this year. Come on, we can do it, we can get it done. And so lastly, I'm currently doing this GoFundMe, because this whole tapering situation isn't great hasn't been great financially for me. There's been times where I haven't been able to do anything, been non-functional, and really it's only now that I feel healthy enough to put on a show. There is another video all about the show, and you can watch that, but I would really like to, like I say, get it into theatres for 3 weeks in London, so it can get reviewed, and really to get it going, to get it into places. It's really interesting, all the topics and all the conversations I'm talking about in there, and it's all true story stuff, real life stuff, about how we're shaped in our childhood, and how mental health is basically treated in the medical system, and sort of interweaving it all together with music. Okay, I'm going to finish there with, I guess this whole experience has made me go for my passions and to focus on my art. Before the pandemic, I was acting and I was booking jobs, but I wasn't doing my own work, and I realised that really that's where all the magic lies. Unfortunately, obstacles seem to come my way. Even just getting something filmed or something recorded has come with such a journey. Getting the right producer, getting the right collaboration together, getting somebody who really embraces my voice. Like when you're recording your voice, it's like you want to go into a studio where things are just clicking. The whole thing has been a wild journey at the age of 38. I mean, I guess if this hadn't happened to me, this has been kind of 4 or 5 years of my life, so I'd probably be 33. Yeah. So it's kind of set me back a chunk, and part of me thinks, well, releasing music at the age of 38 and doing a one-woman show, but I don't know. Got one life, right? We've got to do the things that fill us, and it's part of who I am as an artist to want to create, and I really believe in the work, and I hope that you connect to the songs that I'm about to share. The first one is called "What Have I Died in the Psych Ward?" No chance of the truth anymore. Very apt. So yeah. Sending love.